you know, on the dance floor. I was on the dance floor. Like, you listening? I was on the dance floor last night. And there I had like a really cool tune. When you think disco, hold up. Just stay right there. When you hear disco, you're gonna hear this. Yo, just wait a minute. It's gonna blow your mind. Just a sec. Hey, so you hear that? There's duck noises. Duck noises on a disco track. It's Disco Duck Man. Yeah. Did you know that Disco Duck was actually part of Saturday Night Fever? I'm not joking. Sure. Staying Alive is like an iconic song, but fucking Disco Duck. Disco Duck. Woo! Okay, enough of this shit. Saturday Night Fever is a song. Yeah, no, it's a movie. Saturday Night Fever is a movie from 1977, and is quite often attributed with having started the mainstream disco craze. Disco had existed before that, obviously, but more in coloured and queer spaces, and that is one of the kind of issues with the movie, because at least that's what some people took issue with. The movie is kind of overly white for the fact that, this was a coloured and queer space in a certain correlation, so yeah, that's a bit odd. The point is, the movie stars John Travolta as a dude who works in a hardware store. I understand the story. He just works in a hardware store for like 90 minutes. Obviously he doesn't, but that is the part of the movie that quite a few people will think of like third after the dance scenes. John Travolta just kind of, walking, swaggering down the street, and what's he holding in his hand? That's right, it's a tin can of colour, like colours to make, walls more colourful and such. And the point is, that's just the groundwork, the basic fundamental idea behind the movie, that John Travolta's character is not really part of the glamorous world of disco. He's just working at the hardware store. He's still living with his family, and he's part of a Italian Catholic family, if I remember correctly, very conservative in thought, and that doesn't necessarily align with his deeds and his spare time, where he's hanging out with his crew, and are kind of, sometimes doing really shitty things like starting gang fights, raping women, and taking drugs. you kind of forget about all that stuff if you're just looking at, Saturday Night Fever from the outside, because Saturday Night Fever has that reputation of being a dance movie first and foremost, which it partially is. There's a dance contest at the end of the movie. It's just that that's not the focal point in and of itself. The dancing and the dance scenes themselves are mostly part of, the characters, specifically Tony's character. Tony is the character's name of John Travolta, is mostly part of Tony's self-actualization as a person outside of all the things that had, created him thus far as a person. It's not part of his family. It's not really part of his clique. Nobody else in his gang dances. It is not part of the city in the classical way. New York City in the 70s was very dirty and run down. It would become a popular hub during the late 70s and 80s and 90s and so on and so forth. And nowadays it is basically, it's one of the most popular cities in the fucking world. But back in the 70s, no. New York was kind of a trash heap. And all that just kind of collides with the glamorous world of disco that we're being shown in the movie, in which Tony then kind of can finally bloom like a flower in this environment, where he can be himself, where he can express himself, where he can actually be good at something and not just, mix paint. And that's the point of the movie. It is about someone trying to break out and someone getting lost in that, well, name drop, Saturday Night Fever. And, well, the point of the movie is also about character growth. Once again, as I previously stated, Tony hangs out with his gang, and they do shitty stuff quite often. Shady stuff, shitty stuff, and just stuff that they should probably have thought about a bit more in depth about before doing it. Issue being Tony, if I remember correctly, is either like 19 or 21. He's really fucking young. And of course, he hadn't had the chance to, express himself outside of this very environment that had brought him to the place that he is now. But due to a variety of events that unfurl during the end of the movie, he finally gets to realize that he probably has to change a bit as a person, and that he could potentially maybe even live outside of this environment that had made him to what he was up until that point. This movie deals with heavy subject matters such as suicide, drug abuse, rape, gang violence, racism, the whole hodgepodge. And it does so brilliantly, in my opinion, specifically from the point of view of Tony, whom we know is part of a marginalized group himself, but can't help but be a fucking asshole to other marginalized groups without really thinking about it too deeply. He just does it because everyone else does it. It's peer pressure, but the one thing that he doesn't do because everyone else does it is dancing. And at the end of the story, he even realizes that he could potentially be friends with his dance partner without having to be in a sexual or romantic relationship with her. I don't necessarily recommend watching the sequel because from what I've heard, it's not necessarily building upon this foundation. It's just kind of ignoring it. But I highly recommend this movie. If you've seen Taxi Driver, I think that's a great movie, but I think Saturday Night Fever is a better movie. Not just because the soundtrack is amazing. Fucking hell. That soundtrack is just like, oh my fucking god, it's disco gold. Like, besides the Bee Gees' contributions to that soundtrack, there's obviously the tracks like the Fifth of Beethoven, which is just like this cool mixture of disco and classical music that you wouldn't necessarily get all that often. And, I don't even know what to say, man. I don't know what to say. Cindy, baby, come on the dance floor. Let's dance. Yeah. Hope my John Travolta impression isn't too upsetting for most people. Yeah, on the dance floor. Come on, tonight. Yeah.